I'm super excited about is the fact that as we come up to our 20th year, like trying to take in the fact that it's 20 years of marriage is, I don't know. It's a fun thing to explore and to look at from all angles, because, when you start off your relationship and you're excited to get to the wedding, and then, we wrote our own vows and whatnot. So you're promising all of these things in the future and trying to meditate and think about where you are right now in your relationship. And the future is so exciting because it's got so much adventure and unknowns in it. Mm-hmm. And you at the time you can think about, man, when we're married 20 years, that'll be crazy, like 20 years from now. But it doesn't actually feel that time has passed, which is also something intriguing to me. But like, I feel the same as I did when we first met.
It doesn't feel like we're journeying through time. It feels like we have stood still and everything else is like just kind of gone by, and then we're still the same.
Yes, exactly.
And like, all of a sudden it's like, oh, and we have a son who's going to graduate high school, and it's like, wait, how did that happen?
I think one of the reasons it feels the same is because when we met, we immediately started processing verbally how we viewed life together. Mm-hmm. And so the world could be crazy around us, and we're observing the things around us and what's happening between us, but we're constantly trying to talk about it, define it, understand it, celebrate it, make decisions within it. But we're processing it verbally very much together all the time. So conversation has been a part of our relationship from the literal get-go. Like that first night that we talked all night was not many days after we first met. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So I think that's another reason why it feels sitting here the exact same as it did then, because we're doing the same thing. We're processing verbally.
It's sort of a cyclical process of experiencing life and then seeking to define the experience of it, because it's that's so necessary. It's like, well, where are we? Sort of tracking where you are as time
and
progresses.
it's part of the understanding, it's part of the enjoyment of life for us as well, and like to dig out the deeper meanings of things, to understand it in deeper levels so that we can fully experience life and love. And I think love has been the core concept that we continuously together are trying to understand, grow in, analyze, change ourselves in relation to better love, to better understand how to love everyone in our lives, including each other, right? So I feel like when we got married, again, to kind of back up as to this conversation, when we got married and then 2.5 years before that, when we met, we had experienced love in our families of origin. We had experienced love in friendships and sibling relationships, things like that. And even in families of origin, the good of love and the difficulty of love and how to love well in those scenarios. Then when we meet each other, it's very much like a whole different aspect of love that we were then exploring. And now 20 years later, with both highs and lows and gains and loss, that has been super deep, how love relates to all of those things, is connected to all of those things in business, in family relationships of extended family, or friendships, and betrayal, in like victories of growth, or, overcoming very difficult things, and being able to talk through all of those. To have this conversation now, 20 years later, coming up on our vow renewal, where we're going to write our vows again, my brain is like going into, how can I put into these vows, like, the context of that history, as well as who we are still in the constant present. It seems like a continuous present, and also looking to the future, because there's still unknowns and adventure in our life moving forward. So it's just this whole other time to frame, and to enter our friends and family and whoever else into this conversation of what love is, and how love thinks and speaks and behaves, and so that we can
the outworkings of love.
Yes. Yeah.
And primarily in this podcast, how love brings freedom.
Yes.
That freedom is this outworking of love, and
it's like an earmark of love. It's one of those ways you can discern between love and manipulation.
Yeah.
Is the difference between freedom and bondage is so contrasting. And I feel like so many of our decisions and conversations in life have been focused in on being able to discern between the two.
Yeah, I feel like our whole we just have always had a fascination with relationship, like the operation of relationship, the mechanics of relationship, and within that, the mechanics of love and how it operates, and the mechanics of manipulation and how it operates. And in order to be able to discern the difference between the two.
Yes.
Because I think that we did experience both, in our lives before we met.
Yes.
And then in our lives together, what we're seeking to do is to love and not manipulate. And then as a couple in relationship to, whether it's a professional situation or personally, family wise with our kids, we don't want to be manipulative to our kids and dictators over them in whatever ways. And so it's about escaping the oppressive nature of manipulation in relationship and keeping ourselves from being oppressors in relationship.
That's exactly
because
right.
you can be the victim or the perpetrator.
That's right.
When it comes to
That's
this.
right. As soon as it gets self-focused, then it's like, that's what happens. And I will say, like, one of the reasons for this broader conversation to bring other people into, when people come to our house, if they get to sit in what, our different spaces of conversation, our conversation area that we literally call the conversation area, or like our dining room where we have these conversations, or there's just the basement or the living room, wherever we are, we really take time to talk through concepts with the people that come to our house, and but we live far away from some of our family and friends as well. And so to be able to continue this conversation and include others in it, because we want to always study in community what love is and how it behaves, and have people speaking into that. Also, because when I travel and teach about how love relates in what people would call the business sector, right? They're like, well, come coach on this business thing. I'm constantly actually talking about relationship and how to love better in this scenario to these humans, instead of it's our business to our clients. It's these are human to human interactions where are you acting in a manipulative way for your own self-benefit, or are you acting in a loving way for their benefit, and watching how that translates into the numbers. Actually, it has to go through the whole business. So as I teach on that, I reference you a ton. I reference you all the time. I've had people tell me, of course, that they didn't even believe you existed, that because they hadn't seen you up there, they've seen me talk about you. And so being able together to do our conversations here and pick up these beautiful truths about love and talk about them together, so they can hear straight from you some of the concepts that you've said that have changed my life in my understanding of what love is. Like, your presence in my life is been a mind-blowing shift in so many areas for me, and so helpful. So I'm excited to open this conversation for others to join at this table, and have you speak into some of those things as well, and for us to share some of the stories, both of our triumphs and our failures in relation to love, and the things that we've learned, so that we can dissect them and understand and grow even more. So I'm super excited about all of that, and I can't wait to hear what you have to say. So the fact that we will have it then recorded, selfishly, I'm like, yay, because then I can go back and listen. So I'm pumped for that. So I think it's important then for our audience, frankly, to as a way of introduction, it's important for our audience to know a little bit about who we are and maybe our story, because so many of the antidotes or the stories that we're going to be telling are from when we first met, and then as we've gone through difficulties.
Sorry, I think you just did another one of those things.
Oh no.
This is so great. I'm so glad this happened. My wife, I love you, and you entertain me endlessly, and you have we'll just run it back. There is a word, and it is anecdote.
Oh no.
And when you share an anecdote, it's sort of this.
That's the word. word.
This experience from life that's applicable to like this particular conversation. And yes, there's another word that is antidote, which would be, say, the cure, to a disease. The antidote for this would be that, or those are easily swapped. And this is one of the more entertaining things that happens just as we're in the middle of like deep conversation is that you have an ability or an affliction. I don't know which one it is, but
I think it's an actual disorder, and it's ironic because I speak, and so like it's incredibly ironic that I have this disorder.
Go ahead and can you just describe, because this is a real thing.
It's a real thing. This up. I know that you can look it up. I've had it since I was little, and my parents thought it was just because I was learning to talk. But no, it has stayed with me, these many, many decades.
You do talk very well, but you still do this.
Yeah, so what it is I'll say a real word that sounds something similar to another real word. So it's not that I've made up a word.
No.
It's a real word. It's just the wrong word. So like when I was little, I said that one of the guys who drove the bus for my parents' organization, I said Alan parked the bus crippled instead of crooked. Or I would say he's in the Deuteronomy instead of the dormitory. Or Christy caught a helicopter instead of a caterpillar. And so that,
the similarities.
Yeah, they're very similar words. And I thought I would grow out of it, but you don't grow out of it.
I'm so glad you didn't. I just,
when we were married,
let's never find the antidote to this disease.
Yes.
Or disorder, because I think it's great.
And it's always, it's in serious conversation. I'm very serious and passionate when I'm talking about it. So it can be missed easily, but you never miss it. You always pause and then look at me and then get like, and I'm like, oh shoot.
It's so great because we were driving, I'll just share.
Yeah.
Quick story. We were driving down the road and we were driving past this just amazing house. And it was sort of just a lot of different components to this place. And Wendy, you just looked over and you were like, oh my goodness, like that. Look at that place. It's like as big as a combine. And I was like, I'm driving and I'm like, combine. It's as big as a combine. As big as a combine. Compound. The word compound. And I remember as soon as I said compound, you were like, oh, I knew it was wrong.
I know. We have a presidential election coming up. One of the presidential elections that we were watching a debate on, or maybe somebody had just gotten elected, I think it was, and he was going to give his first speech to both houses, the Senate and the House and whatever. And he was, and they were mentioning how this particular president was on time, and the president before was never on time, evidently, for these things. And so it's a very serious moment. We're very focused on what is good for our country, and what this says about your character. And I was like, I am so glad that we have a president that cares about punctuation.
Yes. And I was like,
that was not it.
Punctuality?
Punctuality. That was the word.
Yeah. So anyway, I didn't mean to derail us.
No, it's totally fine.
But this, But
thinking about a president who's so passionate about exclamation points is funny. Like that was funny. So nope, it's right. So back to what we were saying.
What were we saying?
Messing up words to say. So it's like
you were saying something about an anecdote.
There are specific, anecdote is the word, in case you're wondering. The specific takeaways that I had that were revelations to me, especially at the beginning of our relationship, and then actually continuing over these past 20 some years, those particular lessons we'll dive into. And so it's important to have some context about some truths that we talk about regularly. We talk about these things regularly. We have just dived into them as deeply as we can from the get-go. But if you don't know how we met, the stories of what's unique about our relationship and our own love story and why we believe in these things so deeply, then you'll miss a lot of it. So we want to dive into kind of that first, I feel like, right? Like we want to kind of starting with this whole thing about why do we feel that we're constantly in the present. So let's talk about time for a second and why time is such a key part of our relationship. Why do we? So we're going to dive into that.
Part of the conversation that we have had. I feel like we've had one conversation in our. We're still having it.
Yes, we're still having it.
Yes, it just has never stopped.
It's never ending though. Like as far as the depth to it. So
right. And part of the conversation was early on in trying to define what it was that we were experiencing together, because we just felt that everything that we're experiencing together is so life-changing.
Yes.
That
1,000%.
We need to understand it. And so like now we have to talk about the thing that we're actually going through.
And it's a wonder. It's such a wonder that you have to go like, what in the world? Like, what is this? And what is happening here? And understand it.
Because it was part of why it was so amazing to me was that we met and I felt like I knew you.
Yes.
And it's like, how can I feel like I know you? 6 weeks into knowing each other is our conversation where we're like, okay, yeah, we love each other. We're going to spend the rest of our lives together. And this is going to be a great story for our grandkids. Yeah. Like that's where we were.
Yep.
And how do you feel? How do you get to that point so quickly? It's like, it doesn't seem possible.
No.
But I had a thought about this very, very recently, actually.
Okay.
that I was trying to come up with a way to describe that.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like how far you go, how quickly, just depends on the vehicle you're in. And if I'm riding a bike, I'm going a certain speed. I'm in a go-kart, or I'm a four-wheeler, or a car, or a space shuttle. And 6 weeks it's not a long time, in a typical relationship,
right,
or a friendship to really know someone. That in that vehicle, you know what I mean? Riding a bike, it's like, if you go a couple miles on a bike, it's like, it's going to take you this long to make that progress. But if you're in a car, much shorter time. And I felt like majority of my relationships are like, maybe they're a four-wheeler,
okay.
Yep. But this was the space shuttle that's like goes, 17,000 miles an hour. And when you're 6 weeks in a space shuttle, you get so much further than 6 weeks on a four-wheeler. And so we really were where we thought we were.
That's right.
We just got there very quickly.
And because of a lot of things, like not the least of which was that we were engaged in using our particular gifts in drama and in music and in diving into being transparent on the, being able to be transparent. So we were digging into understanding more of who we were in relation to the truth of the script we were presenting as well, which takes you to deep places faster than just, let's go have a date at Longhorn Steakhouse or something. Like you're having to open yourself in ways that connects you in unique ways.
Quickly.
And so back to the story, just really quick. Yeah. Are you, because I don't want to cut you off if you're on the the rocket ship I like. And so
I think that I think that there's something to that idea of where we reached in the relationship, and how quickly, and the fact that we live in an environment that is space-time. It's both. Space and time are attached. They're linked, right? So, that's part of why it was true what we were sensing and what we were able to verbalize at that point. Because what we verbalized at that point was, love is unconditional and time is a condition. So there is no time in love for that reason. And so love is an experience of something that transcends time. Love is an experience of eternity.
More powerful than more. Yep.
It's an experience of something eternal within time. And so it's sort of, it does funny things. It's like in physics, someone can travel at a certain speed for a certain distance, and it does strange things to time. Like when they first discovered this with an atomic clock, sending it around the world and at a certain speed, and they're like, wait a minute, this clock doesn't match. It's like, the very time itself passes differently. within our universe. And so there's this something very strange to what happens to two people who are experiencing love, the power of love and the transcendent eternal nature of it in their lives. It's like it warps the time, and it's not just a space shuttle. It's like we were on a space shuttle that traveled through a black hole, and we ended up on like the other side of the universe. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
Yeah.
And I love this concept. Like what you're just saying is resonating so deeply with me. Like it's because we've always talked about how it just feels like time ceases to exist when we're together. And you do feel it. It's warped. Like it's how did time pass that fast? What just happened? You know, like you're in a different realm. And so it's not just cutesy in a Hallmark card true. Yeah. Like you're experiencing it and trying to understand why that's the case. And I think what's so intriguing about it is when you first said, back when we were dating, when you first said love is unconditional and time is a condition, that's why time doesn't exist in love. Love borrows relationship from eternity. And that, you know, all of that you said, not even in relation to what we're talking about right now. And you were saying it in relation to our age difference. Like that, you know, that was it's a substantial discussion when we first met, especially. So, you know, just to kind of catch everybody up. Yes, I'm a kind of substantially older than Gabe, and that's, you know, right.
Decreasingly so, though, because like as we get
time
older,
just warps all things. No, love warps all things.
In this time warp of love, it's inconsequential.
Matter. It's inconsequential. But at the moment we met, it was a bit consequential. Like at the time that we met.
To other people, it was.
To other people. To us, it was like, why is this so amazing? And time just didn't seem to make sense in relation to it. But to other people, it was a very, but we had to consider it. We had to look at it and consider it, which is why this discussion was possible. It wasn't like we were like, caution to the wind, who cares? Right. It was, no, we're going to look at it. And so hence what your conclusion was at the time, which was another reason why I was so sure I loved you. And I was like, he can say things like that and he knows what he's saying. That is amazing to me. But so when we met, I had just turned 27 in May. And your birthday's in June.
I was about to turn 19.
You were about to turn 19. So you were still 18.
Yeah.
So it was 27 and 18. And to kind of compound the situation from the outside in, I was one of the team leaders of the team that you came to travel on. I was the playwright and the director of the play that you were coming to audition for and act in. So all of those dynamics were
pretty cool.
It was you had to audition for me.
I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here, but I was kind of at the time like, this is really happening. Okay.
Yeah. Well, you absolutely made it happen for sure, because that's what I think people didn't understand either. Here, I have strong leadership skills, so they're going to assume, you know, like that's first words I said to you that night that you and I actually talked about the fact that there was something here. To your proactive, we're going to talk about this.
Well, it was the same thing that we've been discussing. Is that I had a sense of the experience that we were having, and that it was something so significant that it needed definition. Like we needed to define it.
You literally said that.
And that's what
night.
I said was, this is so undefined. I was sensing the lack of definition as something that we, in an imperative sense, it was incumbent upon us to define it.
Because we had talked, we had the opportunity to talk like at long periods of time with the whole team at different places near us. Yeah. And we were able to just zero in and talk. We're laughing. We're talking about deep things. And it's not making any sense to my brain how this is such a fun conversation or such a deep conversation. And it's like, oh my goodness. And then I just kind of come back team type situation. And you were like, yeah, we're not going to keep doing that. We're going to actually, this needs to be defined. And I think that I found, I falsely thought that a safe position was to not have it defined. That
I feel like if, you know, how I felt about that was like, I know like how I can see, I'm feeling how my feelings are progressing in all of this. And it's like, we got to define this pretty soon, because this is just going to be, it's just going to be this runaway train, you know?
And I was like, if we don't define it, then it's probably not happening. And I won't have to worry about what is that actually happening. It's just we're having a good time, right? Everybody's having a good time. It's great. We're all having a new, so it's very purposeful on your part where you were like, we're going to, you know. And
it was like, okay, well, I need to know that it's okay for this to go wherever it's going to go. And so if we define this and understand it, then we can know if this is, if it's all right to keep like barreling down the tracks, so to speak.
Yeah. So we sat down that night and you said, I think there's something here. And if I'm right, if there is, I don't want to let it go. Am I wrong? And then I'm like, good grief, this guy, like he is just not going to, let this conversation not happen. So I had to respond. And then I was like, you are not wrong. And I remember you smiled and you were like, good. And then I said, but your parents are going to hate me because I just knew like, they're going to think I did this. So, you know what I'm saying? Like and that's a natural thought. And then you were like, No, they won't. I mean, my mom might for a little bit, but she'll get over it. And you were right, like that. Not that she hated me, but that it took a little time. It took time, and then then she absolutely loved and embraced me, which I'm so thankful. But but no, it was that night that we talked about what a great story this would be for our kids. Like we knew that night, and then you were so again aware of what's happening as it's happening. And you've always been so strong in that way. Like you're never ahead and you're never behind. You are right there in the constant present, even though you hold on to everything that's happened. You know how what we're doing in the present has ramifications in the future, but you're not disconnected from the present moment, and you don't go too fast, too far, which is funny to say or too far, too fast. So I mean to say, it's funny to say because this is only 6 weeks in. So you could say, well, you went, too far, too fast on this one, but you didn't. And, even that night when you were like, I think I love you. And it was such a profound look on your face of like, I am realizing this right now and I need to say this to you. It wasn't like I'm saying this so that you'll say it back, like you literally just needed to say it.
Right. Yeah. That was sort of a compulsion, not like a spur of the moment compulsion thing. I felt compelled, like the same I was doing in that moment, the thing that we're talking about, that we're trying to define the experience. And so it's like, that's me trying to define the experience and say, like, I think I love you and I need you. It's weird to say that because you would think there's a lot of thought and sometimes machinations that can go on surrounding like, oh, well, am I going to say that I love this person? Am I, and it's the act of saying that you love someone can be something that is sort of like held in this little box. It's like, oh, if that box is over there and it's sort of staring at me and it's like, well, am I going to do this? Am I going to, and it's like that. I would much rather discover that I love someone than confer my love upon them after I have maybe, I don't know, deemed them worthy or you know what I'm saying? Like there is a sense in which, maybe in that sense that love happens to us. And then we, cause I did, like I said before,
there's something I want to say here, though, that's connected to what you're about to say, though. You have to be able to recognize love itself. And I think therein lies a big problem, is that people aren't sure what love actually is. So then they're like, do I love this person? Do they? I don't know. And it's this weird, like, out there concept where it's like, I can't tell if it's love and what to do with it. It's almost like this unreachable, intangible thing. And so I think that's why people try to find something tangible that, okay, yes, I feel like I have enough boxes checked to know that this is love. So now I know this is love.
Or I'm not willing to say that I love you unless I know you love me.
And then some people are saying, I love you so much because they have no idea what love actually is. They're saying, I love you to this person and this person and this person, in some sort of eternal eternal way. Like, I want to be with you for eternity. Oh, that didn't work. I want to be with you for eternity. It didn't work. Like, they throw it around too easily too. And that's why, it's such a different experience to have had that from you. And I've had other relationships that would say the same, but they didn't say it. They didn't understand and say it in the way that you did, the understanding that came with it. Mm-hmm. They said it in such a way that they were also looking for me to say it in return. Yeah. And there was almost a pressure that came with it.
Yeah. I felt like I was discovering that I loved you.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, and somehow you were the only person that could like help me, know that was the case. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It was very strange to be talking to the person about the feelings that you have for that person, so that person can help you more clearly understand your feelings for that person. It was, you know what I'm saying? It was, that was a strange sensation, because it's like, if anything will help me understand what I feel truly, it's me being transparent about it with you that will help give me clarity. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Do you feel like I did? Because I remember when you said that, and I didn't say it back.
No, but it was just sort of like, it was me verbalizing it to you. It wasn't anything about how you responded that gave me clarity. It was like, I need to say it to you. I need to say this to you. And in the saying of it, there was more clarity to it, where it's like, yep, I think I love you. And it was like, yeah, that's it. That's it. All right, now we can conclude our conversation. Good night. And you know what I mean? It's like,
I do know what you mean, because I remember your expression.
Yeah.
Like, you said it and you kind of nodded, and then we went inside, and it was like
I wasn't like the object.
Yeah.
Of saying that was to understand, not to get a response.
Yeah.
So that's why.
And this is why we call this podcast Love and Freedom, because at every turn, when we encounter what love actually is, and as we have tried our whole, both individual lives and then our life as a married couple, to dive into more of what love is, inevitably it is connected to freedom. Mm-hmm. It's not connected to, let me try to make someone else do something. And when you find yourself reaching to make someone else do something, know immediately that is not what love is. Like, you have to free to truly love. And that is what I experienced from you, and experience from you all the time. Like, another reason I think this conversation is important is hearing strong men talk about what love is something I don't see very much. I wish there was more of it. And so to know that, like, it's not weak. In fact, it's the strongest thing you can do is understand and live out what love is. And I, as the main recipient of that from you, I'm not the only, but the main, I'm amazed by it, thankful for it, and changed by it. And if there were more of these discussions in the whole world, it would change key things in the world. So that's another reason I'm excited for it.
Yeah, I was going to say something. You just said something that sparked a thought.
I'm sorry.
It was talking about the, what did you
I was saying
before that.
About freeing each other, that love brings freedom, and that you're focused on freeing the other. And as soon as you find yourself making someone do something, then
it was something along that line.
It sure was. There it went. It'll come back.
It'll come back. But yeah. In the meantime. How about we just sit here and drink water?
Break. I like it. That sounds good. Perfect. Well, I remember the leadership that you took to in.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Leadership.
Perfect.
You mentioned leadership, and the thing that jumps out to me about, like, talking about men talking about love, and I don't see that a lot out there either. I think that see a lot of other subjects being talked about as far as like having to do with like the role that men should play and what they should be focused on and all of that. But what I would say about my experience with you and going back to saying, I think I love you, that's leadership in love.
That's right.
Is being willing to be transparent first, being willing to be vulnerable first, because that vulnerability attached to sharing exactly how you feel or how you think you are feeling, in a moment is a vulnerable proposition, and it carries with it risk, right? Because you may not reciprocate. Right. You may not feel the same way. And then I've just said, I think I love you.
And if I had been like, oh, that's cute, sweetheart, but you're 19. Like, I'm sorry I've given you the wrong idea about our,
Yeah. So it's like there's the possibility of rejection. Yeah. And that's, I think, one of the important steps of leadership that you can take in love is that if you know how you feel, don't withhold how you feel. And it's not to say that, like, sometimes maybe you don't know as the man how you feel yet. Well, it doesn't mean you say something that you don't feel.
That's right.
Or that you don't know, or that you're not actually trying to figure out. But you don't shy away from saying exactly where you are. And
I think that go into a thought. I don't want to like about this where we sometimes I'm just going to generalize here, but we as women sometimes can try to force you to say certain things to make us feel a certain thing. And we think we know what that is, and we think we know how to get to the feeling we're trying to get to, of whether security or, comfort or whatever. And so then we try to get you to say certain things, and that will make us feel. It's a misguided operation. It can absolutely derail. And if the man, in trying to love, you're trying to love your partner and give them the things that they are saying they want, they may end up saying things that they don't actually feel or think because they're following that. And I think it's really important to stay individual centered, working to understand love and each other, humans, and not just follow each other down a drain that's actually unsafe. Like, I think that.
Yeah, I think that what you're saying. Let's see. I think it's an attempt to give definition to the relationship.
Well, and it's also, but then see, that's when it transitions into control, where it's like, I want to make you say something for me.
Right.
It's not loving and freeing them to say whatever it is they're actually thinking and feeling when they need to think and feel it. This happens in relationships a lot.
Yeah. If somebody does that, then the risk that you run is that you end up with a false definition of the relationship.
That's right.
Because if the guy's just sort of like, well, I don't know how I feel, but I know what she wants me to say.
Right. And then also,
I'm going to kind of go along with what she wants. Then, if that's not a true representation of where you are in the relationship, well, then she may feel good in that moment that, like, oh, he said this. I got him to say this, and I feel great.
I feel great. But
it's
then,
not
it's fleeting. And then I've got to come up with everything from here forward. It'll then be on me to come to know everything I need said so I can force you to say it.
Or like keep checking on the thing that you got him to say.
Keep getting reminders of it because I know it didn't come from him. I know that I elicited that. That's right. But also on the flip side of it, one thing that you do that I'm so thankful for, you give prefaces before you're going to say something. And in an arena where a preface would be really helpful in not manipulating the other is this arena of trying to discover if you love each other. Because I've had, a guy say to me before that he prayed all night and has a real peace that I am the person for him, and there was pressure that came with that, whether he meant it or not to be pressure. There was pressure that came with that where I had to literally be like, but I was not told the same thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so I think
sort of a really extreme version of telling someone you love them so that they will reciprocate is like bringing a spiritual component into it, like, hey, you know what? Not only do I love you, but God wants you to love me. Yeah,
and the fact that He's only going to tell one person this answer, and that so suddenly, whether he realized it or not, in fact, I'm sure he didn't realize it, but what he was saying to me is, you're not actually a part of this scenario.
God and I have it all worked out.
Yeah, we've worked it out.
You love me.
And I'm here to give you the memo. This is what's going to happen.
I love that.
So I think that if he had prefaced and said, I'm not saying that, I can't speak for you and I want to hear from your perspective, but for me, I would be,
like the way that strikes me is that's the aversion to the risk.
Oh,
he wanted to tell you he loved you, but he was not emotionally prepared for the risk involved in telling you that. So he's hedging and trying to manipulate you into giving the answer back that you love him.
God
because
is on my side with
right.
this.
Like, listen, this is so much says that you love me.
Yeah.
Right. And it's like, no, just say how you feel.
Yeah.
You don't have to couch it in all these terms and whatever. So but that's how it strikes me, is that's partially born of the insecurity inside him that this is not going to be reciprocated. So I'm going to just, put all the weight that I can into this statement so that you will hopefully say the same thing.
And the opposite was the experience of love being communicated and feeling free. I felt free when love was communicated, and that was key. Another time that you did that I think has been so powerful in my life is when I told you when we first started dating that I have this thing through experiences of other relationships and in my life that if things start to go sideways or funky or whatever, these gauges around my heart that I turn off, and I wish that I didn't have them, but I do have them, and I just need you to know that if those start turning off and I start becoming more distant and protective, that's what it is. And I don't remember, I don't know what I thought you were going to say to that, but what you said, I was not prepared for. And it was incredible because you just looked right at me and you were like, good, I'm glad, and keep them because they will protect you and you'll know when you don't need them anymore. Yeah. And I was like, mind blown. I was like, funny, I don't need them anymore. Like it just immediately, it was the most incredible moment inside me. I can't articulate it even, but it was so not like, hey, I'm here now. I'm different than all the other guys. And I'm, you don't need those anymore,
Right. But that's not love's attitude.
Right.
That's not love for the other person. And I felt love for you. I loved you. And so because I loved you, if you're telling me that you have these gauges, you're describing yourself, like your inward self to me, which is so valuable. Like that's amazing that you're like in that moment, it's like, wow, like you're just bringing me in to your thoughts and your heart. And that's incredibly special. And then you're telling me like this incredibly vulnerable thing. Like you're worried about it.
I am. I'm worried that it's going to communicate something wrong to you that is not what I'm trying to communicate. Exactly. Like I'm trying to care for.
You're prefacing the future of the relationship and like what your actions and words might be toward me.
That's right. The hurts I've experienced, I don't want that to hurt our relationship. And I'm trying to make sure there are things that have happened and this is, how I've dealt, and so please know that
it's essentially like I don't know if coping mechanism is the right terminology, but it's something close to that. Yeah,
sure. Results
where it's like I have learned or I've developed these systems around my emotional self that protect me from painful situations, and so these might get in the way, and I think it's a. It's an incredible observation. It's hard to observe things about yourself. And it was an amazing observation of yourself that you had these, and further than just having them, that they might be things that would get in the way of how you want to interact with me.
To relate to you.
And so it was like, I couldn't have verbalized all of that in that moment, those are all things that I'm sensing. Just like, I could pull a leaf off of a tree and I have the whole thing in my hand, but then if we put it under a microscope, we're going to see all the things that are in my hand. I'm holding this in my hand. I have all of that, and I'm experiencing that. And then it's sort of like, as time has gone by, you look back and it's like, yeah, that's what I was feeling from you. That's what you were giving me in that moment. And so very transparently, you're inviting me into your inner world. And then I'm there with you. And it's like, if that's what you've developed over time, then your experiences with everyone else has warranted the production and development of those things inside you. That was my natural assumption. Then all of that was warranted. And if it was warranted and it's been beneficial to you, and that's what you're telling me too, is that like they help me. And so and involuntarily, they help me. When those things snap, then it's not a choice. These things just are happening. And so if this happens, then I'm, hey, here's how I want you, this is what I want you to know. And it's like, oh, okay, well, if you have all of that, then great. Because I don't want you to get hurt, first of all. Even more than that, I don't want to be someone that hurts you. And those are two different things. I don't want you to get hurt. And it, like, part of me is so sad that you have been through scenarios that have been painful, that have been the impetus for you to develop these things in the first place. But then the other part of me is like, I don't want to be the cause of those things snapping into place and you having to maybe wall some part of yourself off because I'm being an idiot in some way. So I wanted you to keep those things. And then it's like, if you reach the point where you don't think that those things are useful to you anymore, I further had the confidence that you could allow those things to sort of fall off or just fall into disuse, and sort of like a piece of machinery that no longer has the fuel or the battery that runs it. You just let those things become obsolete in that way.
I think that people miss this so much in relationship. They miss this element because then the response I think that could be normal in this situation of somebody sharing that is that the person then feels that, but I'm different. You don't have to, I'm not going to hurt you. Their feeling of I don't want to hurt you comes out as I won't hurt you.
Well, like my love of you made me not trust my own will. You know what I'm saying? Because I loved you too much to believe the lie that I could just all of a sudden attain perfection in my motivations and my actions toward another human being because I'm not perfect. And so I know my own imperfection. And just because I love you, it doesn't change the fact that I'm imperfect. Yeah. And if I do love you, then I have to be concerned about you. And my love motivates me to be concerned about you in every circumstance, including a circumstance where I, in my imperfection, hurt you. And so it was not a foreign concept or some impossibility that I might be the cause of pain in your life.
But those, I will also say those gauges were not because of you. And people make that mistake as well, where they're like, well, you're putting these gauges up to me, but I haven't earned those gauges. I haven't done anything to you to make you do that for me.
Right. But
so like you need to let those go because I'm not that way and I'm not going to do that. So guess what? You don't need them anymore. And they try to do that in a desire to give the person security. And what was so profound to me was that that's not what you said, nor would that have given me security. If you had said, I'm here and I'm different than that, it's not going to be the same. I mean, I'm not those guys. I didn't do that to you. And, and you didn't take it as against you. You listened and valued it for me, just as I was trying to share it for you.
Right. Because it wasn't against me. It was for you. You had developed those things for you. But see, not against me.
I'm just saying that to point up the fact that to anyone listening or a part of this conversation, it's an important takeaway. Well, that like instead of when someone is behaving certain ways because of their history, whether it's their family of origin or like where things they've experienced in their life up until that point, it is a part of who they are, and it's their responses or triggers or things that are in the understanding that when love comes in and sees and hears and values the other person, there is such a security that can be created that a lot of those things will go away very quickly. But it's not a security that you can command them to let those things go. That's not security. That's more, that brings more fear. And actually it's a controlling move. I'm going to make you make those things go rather than be the thing that will immediately release those things from what you're holding on to. You won't need
You
them.
can't come at it directly.
That's right.
Like you have to, the releasing of those things is a byproduct of something that is more fundamental.
We're smiling because this is one of Gabe's favorite topics. You will hear this on the podcast over and over and over if you stick around for these stories. And that is this concept of
primary and derivative.
Primary and derivative. Just camp out there for a second. There are things
that are primary and they produce, one and many times, most of the time, more than one sort of byproduct. And so if you can identify in life the things that are fundamental, that produce other dynamics, and then identify the dynamics that are derivative as such, then that is so important because what we're talking about here, you having these gauges around your heart was a byproduct of something.
Yes.
And so if I say, okay, well then my goal is for you to let go of these gauges.
Yes.
Then I'm not actually addressing the thing that produced this result in your life. I'm just attacking the byproduct. I'm dealing with the byproduct as if the solution to making that go away lies in this derivative manifestation of something more fundamental in your life.
And something that is true about primary versus derivative, and where we're talking about this, babe, in this setting, that I feel like is true across the board in the primary derivative conversations that we have. But going after the derivative is always something that is self-serving. It is always something for you. The primary always requires of you to be thinking of others. I think that's an essential difference in this conversation. If you'd have gone after the derivative, what is the derivative? You don't need those gauges. Don't put any blocks between the two of us. I want, because I'm here and I don't want those. Those are related to somebody else's hurt to you, not me. That's not fair to put that up against me. It's you know what I mean? You're going after that transparency and trying to force that instead of the primary of let me help you know that I believe in you and everything that you've experienced and the things that you have done to handle and live and survive and be victorious in life so far. And I want you to hold on to every single thing that has ever built or helped you. And and you're the one that owns that in a good way. And I want you to know you're the only one that will know when you don't need it. I'm not here to be able to, I can't proclaim that. I can't tell you that. I can't make that decision for you. So you freed me to not only decide where the value is anymore with these gauges, but then also to be a full human in this relationship. It's not now, oh, Gabe, tell me if I need something or don't need something.
No.
You showed such respect and freedom for me to be fully my own decision maker. And that was beautiful. It was the most powerful thing that it not just freed me, it freed me in multiple areas. Do you see what I mean? It freed me on dimensions I didn't even realize. That's why I keep talking about this conversation of when we were dating, because it's so powerful.
You said that you had made a comment that you wanted to clarify something for the benefit of people who may be listening, and I wanted to for maybe the men that are listening, something that I wanted to point out about that situation is that that idea that what you had constructed for your own say internal well-being in relationship was not somehow an offense against me. It wasn't. I had no reason to be offended at that because it wasn't constructed for me. It was something that was in you that you're letting me know is there. And so I need to be aware of it is what you're saying. And so great. But there's no reason to be like, oh, well, get rid of that immediately. Because the saying that, if I were to say that to you in that moment, that, well, get rid of that. You don't need it. I'm responding to you as if you did construct it for me, first of all. And again, we've already said that's not the case.
Sure.
But then the constructing that apparatus in yourself, it's you built it, you have to unwind that, or you have to let it become obsolete. And I had it framed a certain way in my mind. It's a mistake to treat it as though it is it's constructed for me. I have to
I'll throw this out there if it helps.
Yeah, go ahead.
The fact that if you were not the one that it was constructed for, then your full understanding of why it's there, how it's there, around what is it there, would not be able to be there. Like, you wouldn't be able to tell me how to deconstruct it, because it's not like, it wasn't for you. It isn't framed around you. So there's nothing, you know what I mean?
And it's the relationships are not disconnected. The relationships are not these siloed things. You were in all of the relationships that preceded ours. You're the common thread. And so you can't divorce you in this moment from the you in all of the other previous moments. So the thing that was constructed, there are reasons it's there. And you cannot have a problem as the guy in this situation. I can't have a problem with the fact that exists, because this is not separate. This is part of your life. And it's like, it always helps me to conceptualize our lived experience much the same way as the growth in a tree.
Yeah.
Because the trees have rings. We were just a couple weeks ago.
Even a week ago. Yeah.
Out in California, in the giant forest, seeing these amazing sequoia trees, and it's amazing. And there's this cross section, this like remnant of a stump, and you can see where the fires occurred.
Yeah.
And I think that is so instructive. Because it applies to people. Yeah. We carry with us all of the experiences of our lives, and they're inside us like the rings of a tree. And there are certain layers that were damaged. And for the sequoia, it's like when it goes through a fire, it doesn't kill the tree, but after the tree is burned, the first couple years afterwards, typically there's like incredible growth. And it could be a function of trying to build protection quickly or whatever it is, but there's maybe there's more nutrients in the soil from the fire, whatever it is. The environment is different. And so now there is growth, which is kind of a lesson in and of itself, but we're the same way. Yeah. And when you're telling me I've been through some fires, and so there are some things inside me that are like the remnants, the scarred layers of the fires that I've been through. And so I have these things as a result of that. How in the world, if I am understanding it that way, can I blame you for having those remnants of those calamities that you've maybe experienced in the past, or just whatever bad relationships?
Especially it took a while for you to grow up, so you didn't show up for a while because I was living life until you came. So there was more opportunity for those fires to happen in my life, waiting for you to get old enough to meet. So that would be great. Like if we'd have met sooner, that'd have been a problem. So. So, more of those lived through fires on my side, for real, like in the relationship.
And so like if I begrudge you that, if I'm like, I can't believe this, just because I don't have them.
Yes.
And again, why don't I have them? It's like, well, I haven't lived as much life. All right. At that, I'm just, so I'm just saying it would be, there are 6 different ways that this would be a mistake.
Yeah.
To have a problem with you having these gauges around your heart.
1,000%. I also want to say it's important, the last thing that you said in the answer, that I would know when I don't need them anymore, which why that's important, I think that people make this mistake in relationship as well, where they almost say things like, oh, good, you need to keep those forever.
Right.
When you say, I'll know when I don't need them anymore, there's the truth there that in a true, transparent, loving relationship, those aren't needed. Mm-hmm. It's not that I have developed these and now that's a muscle I should always have. And that's important for the survival of life. And it wasn't that. And people can feel that way about themselves, not just talking to somebody else. They can be like, well, I've developed these and I need to keep them and you need to honor them. And everybody needs to interact with me based on these things. And they don't realize that those are actually mechanisms that are sometimes involuntarily there over periods of hurts or difficulties. But the ultimate is to not have them, not to keep them forever.
Yeah, and but it's not that I'm putting a timeline on it and saying this is when you need to have these gone by in order for this to be a successful relationship.
That's right.
But the reality is, and what I was expressing in that statement is that my belief is that in love, I'm looking out for your heart and you're looking out for mine.
That's right.
And if it's going to be love, there has to be that level of letting the other in. You're in where you can hurt me in love.
That's good.
And if you love me, you're letting me in where I could hurt you. And so the trust that is the companion of love is the trust that says, I believe that this most fragile part of me you're going to take care of. And you're not going to use the access that you have to the most sensitive, vulnerable aspects of myself for wrong purposes, for evil, for selfish uses, or to abuse me in some way, to manipulate me, whatever.
Right.
And so in that scenario, there is no purpose for the gauges, because in love we let the other in beyond where those gauges are, and that's the thing that makes those gauges irrelevant. Is that if we grow in our relationship to the point where you love me in that way, you're going to decide, I don't need this, I don't need that, because I want him where those gauges don't exist. Yeah.
I love it.
I love you.
I love you too.
We like to talk about love.
Well, there's so many stories and connections that are like this that we're going to be talking through that are universal truths about the understanding of love, the discovery of love, the expression of love, the activities of love. And it's not about, we want to tell you our story so that you can go, ooh, what a cool love story that has nothing to do with me. The point of sharing anything about what love is because love is a shared experience with the whole world. Everyone is in relationship in their life of some kind where love is necessary to understand, so you can perceive it as love, live out love. And so you can get away from things that are not love, that manipulation can't then creep in and control you and put you in bondage. So that's the overall desire. Come to the table, guys, and enjoy this conversation. Please give input to this conversation as well. I would say we want your input. We want your questions. We want your thoughts, whether you agree or disagree, or you have your own perspective and life experience. It's welcome here. We're excited to dive into it, and we can't wait to talk about it. And so join us for the next conversation. If you like the podcast, or if you're just intrigued and you're like, maybe I want to hear more about this, definitely subscribe so that when it comes on, it just goes cling. And then it's we're going to talk some more about things that hopefully make an impact in the world, one person at a time. Because that's the ultimate goal and the best we can hope for, right? Is that one person at a time will make an impact with this subject of love.
Yeah.
Yeah.